truth awaits in the dark. True story.
What is the ultimate eraser? It washes away fingerprints. It dissolves evidence. It swallows sound. When you drop something into the crushing, freezing depths of a flooded industrial quarry, you don't expect it to ever come back. You expect the dark to keep your secrets, but nature is unpredictable. And sometimes the abyss spits things back out. Welcome to the Verdict Files. This is an educational documentary investigation into one of the most mechanically bizarre and psychologically disturbing cold cases in modern history. A case that involves absolute precision, underground syndicates, and a forensic failure that lasted a quarter of a century. This is the mystery of the Steel Cradle. It was September 14th, 1998. A team of deep-water technical divers was mapping the bottom of the Blackwood limestone quarry. This wasn't a recreational dive site. No. The water here was highly alkaline, freezing cold, and dropped to depths of over 200 feet. Visibility was practically zero. By midday, the sonar on their support boat picked up a dense geometric anomaly resting on a ledge at a depth of 140 feet. It didn't look like a sunken boat. It didn't look like a discarded car. It was perfectly rectangular. Two divers descended into the gloom. As their high-powered halogen lights pierced the murky water, they found it. Half buried in the thick silt was a massive package, heavily wrapped in thick industrial-grade black polyethylene plastic. It was bound tightly with heavy-duty steel chains. They assumed it was illegal chemical dumping. Attaching lift bags to the chains, they slowly inflated them, bringing the massive, heavy object to the surface. It took a motorized winch on the boat just to haul it onto the deck. The weight was staggering. When they cut through the chains and sliced open the thick black plastic, the smell of decay immediately hit the air. But it wasn't just remains that they found. It was the structure holding them. Inside the plastic was a custom-welded solid steel grid. It looked like a heavy industrial cradle. And woven into the center of this heavy iron structure were the skeletal remains of a human being. The dive backed away in sheer horror. The authorities were called immediately. When forensic teams arrived to examine the scene, they realized they were dealing with something completely unprecedented. This was not a crime of passion. This was not a quick disposal. The Steel Cradle was a masterpiece of macabre engineering. When investigators measured the steel grid, a chilling realization washed over them.
See anything?
The frame was exactly 160 centimeters long. The width perfectly matched the shoulder span of the skeleton. The heavy iron bars were bent and welded to secure the wrists and ankles at exact angles. Think about the psychological implications of this. The killer or killers didn't just shoot someone and throw them in a river. number. They took the victim's exact anatomical measurements. They sourced heavy-grade industrial steel. They used an arc welder to fabricate a cage designed specifically for one unique human body. It was a custom-built tomb, designed to be so incredibly heavy that it would sink immediately and remain on the bottom of the quarry until the end of time. But who was the victim? The press quickly dubbed him the Grid Man. The medical examiner faced a monumental task. The body had been submerged for at least a year, perhaps longer. The highly alkaline water of the quarry had stripped away almost all organic material. All they had were bones. The autopsy revealed key details. The victim was a male, approximately 160 centimeters tall, aged between his late 20s and mid-40s. His teeth were mostly in good condition, save for one missing molar that had been extracted years prior to his death. The cause of death was brutal. The skull showed signs of severe blunt force trauma, multiple heavy strikes to the cranium that would have caused massive hemorrhaging. But the medical examiner couldn't answer the most terrifying question of all. Was he dead when they welded him into the frame? Or was he strapped in alive, bludgeoned, and thrown into the black water? To give the Grid Man a face, law enforcement brought in a forensic artist. Using the precise measurements of the skull, they reconstructed a 3D clay model of his face. The image was broadcasted across every news station, printed in every newspaper, and plastered on billboards. The police waited for the phone to ring, and it did. The public flooded the tip lines with theories. Some claimed it was a religious cult sacrifice due to the exact geometric shape of the metal. Others insisted it was the work of an underground mafia, sending a terrifying message to their rivals. I mean, you don't build a custom steel tomb unless you are trying to make a point. The police leaned heavily into the organized crime theory. The sheer weight of the steel grid meant it was physically impossible for one man to carry it to the edge of the quarry and throw it in. This was a coordinated effort. A crew. $100,000 reward was offered. Detectives began hunting through the files of missing persons with known mob connections. Their first prime suspect was an enforcer named Victor. Victor was the exact height of the victim and had vanished 18 months before the discovery at the quarry. Police tracked down Victor's estranged family, extracted DNA samples, and ran them against the marrow extracted from the Grid Man. The result? A 0% match. They moved to the next suspect, a notorious hitman who had simply disappeared off the grid a decade prior. Again, the DNA was tested. Again, it was a dead end. Years turned into decades. The files gathered dust in the cold basement of the precinct. The clay face of the victim stared blankly from cold case boards. The Blackwood anomaly became nothing more than an urban ghost story. Until the year 2023. 25 years after the Steel Cradle was pulled from the depths, forensic science experienced a massive revolution. Advanced genetic genealogy, and next-generation sequencing allowed scientists to extract highly degraded DNA and build complex family trees. A new team of cold case investigators decided to run the grid man's DNA through this new system. They cross-referenced the genetic markers with public ancestry databases, and they got a hit. A direct familial link. But the result sent absolute shockwaves through the department. The DNA matched a family that the original investigators had already tested and dismissed back in the late 90s. The original report had stated definitively that there was absolutely no connection. Was it a catastrophic lab error in 1998? Or was someone inside the department paid to falsify the original DNA report to protect the killers? This massive discrepancy fueled public outrage and conspiracy theories that persist to this very day. Regardless of the past corruption, the truth was finally out. The grid man had a name: Julian Vance. Julian Vance was 37 years old when he vanished. He wasn't a mob boss. He wasn't an undercover cop. He was a deeply troubled man with a severe, all-consuming addiction to high-stakes underground poker. Julian lived his life in the shadows of illegal gambling dens. He would scrounge together cash, disappear for days on end, and return completely broke. His family was so accustomed to his random, week-long disappearances that when he walked out of his apartment in November of 1997, they didn't immediately report him missing. When they finally did go to the police, his case was brushed off as just another drifter avoiding his debts. They never knew that while they were waiting for him to come home, he was resting at the bottom of the Blackwood Quarry, encased in steel. Knowing his identity answered the who, but it only deepened the terrifying mystery of the why. If Julian was just a gambling addict who owed money to the wrong people, why go to such extreme theatrical lengths to dispose of him? Criminal syndicates are businesses. They operate on efficiency. A bullet in the desert is cheap. Measuring a man, buying heavy industrial steel, hiring a professional welder to construct a perfectly proportioned iron cage, wrapping it in thick plastic, and chartering a boat to dump it, that requires time, money, and intense, deeply personal hatred. The prevailing theory today is that Julian didn't just owe money. He tried to cheat the syndicate. He insulted the intelligence of people who do not forgive. The steel grid wasn't just a disposal method. It was a psychological punishment. It was a terrifying statement to anyone else who thought about crossing them. To this day, the individuals who measured Julian Vance, the welder who fused the iron, and the men who pushed that heavy steel cradle into the freezing dark have never been caught. As you lie in bed tonight, think about the level of cold, calculating malice it takes to build a custom cage for a human being. We often fear monsters hiding in the dark. But the most terrifying monsters are the ones who know how to use a tape measure and a welding torch. What is your verdict? Was this the work of a syndicate making an example out of a cheat? Or does the falsified DNA report from 1998 point to something much darker, involving the very people sworn to protect the city? Leave your theories in the comments below.
Looks like we're back to square one.
If you found this investigation compelling, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the Verdict Files for more declassified nightmares. Until next time, stay out of the deep water.
The truth awaits in the dark.